I just came across something that made my jaw drop. And if you care even a little about your Second Amendment rights, you need to hear this. The ATF? Yes. The same federal agency that's been working overtime to ban certain types of ammunition is allegedly stockpiling massive quantities of that exact same ammo. You heard that right? The stuff they say is too dangerous for you and me to own? They're quietly storing it behind closed doors. And no one's talking about it. No press release, no Senate hearings, just a quiet buildup in government-controlled storage, while they push harder than ever to strip us of our rights to own the very same rounds. Now, I'm not some conspiracy theorist wearing a tinfoil hat, but this stinks. So I started digging. And the deeper I went, the clearer it became. This isn't just about ammo. It's about control. Today, we're going to pull the curtain back. I'm going to show you what I found. Real documents, real sources, and you can decide for yourself if we've been lied to. Trust me, once you see what's going on, you won't look at the ATF the same way again. I won't waste your time explaining who the ATF is. If you're here, you already know. They're the federal agency with their hands all over firearms, explosives, and, of course, ammunition. You know what they do. You've seen what they've tried to ban. And right now, it's not about who they are. It's about what they're doing behind closed doors. Because this time, they might have gone too far. So here's where things get weird. Over the last few months, I kept noticing whispers across YouTube and gun forums. Talk of the ATF supposedly stockpiling ammo. Yeah, at first, I brushed it off. Internet rumors, right? But then I saw it pop up in Freedom of Information Act requests. That's when my alarm bells went off. One of the first real red flags came from documents exposed by Gun Owners of America. These weren't YouTube comments. These were official communications, showing that the ATF and even the FBI had been monitoring ammunition purchases. Specifically, they were keeping track of large volume buys, people who purchased over 1,000 rounds at a time. You and I know that's not unusual for enthusiasts or preppers, but to them, that's a red flag. Even more disturbing, internal memos hinted at the existence of federal ammo storage sites used for testing, classification, and evidence retention. Sounds innocent enough until you realize the sheer scale we're talking about. We're not talking about a few boxes locked away for court exhibits. We're talking warehouse-level inventories of banned or restricted ammunition. Why would the same agency trying to regulate, and in some cases outright ban, specific types of rounds be keeping pallets of it for themselves? Some defenders claim it's just evidence or test material. But how much evidence do you need? And how long do you need to keep it? Are they planning to use it? Are they preparing for something we're not supposed to know about? Let's be clear. I'm not saying this is a smoking gun, yet, but it looks an awful lot like a case of do as I say, not as I do. And that's the kind of hypocrisy that should make every American uncomfortable. So I kept digging, and what I found next took it to a whole new level. One ammo type that keeps showing up in ATF memos, watch lists, and regulatory proposals is the infamous SS-1909 M855 green tip 5.56 NATO round. You know it. I know it. It's one of the most common types used by responsible gun owners, affordable, widely available for years, and effective both on the range and in real-world situations. It also happens to have a steel penetrator tip, which gives it a bit more punch through harder materials. That tip, though, that's the scapegoat. It's the reason the ATF has tried, more than once, to classify this round as armor-piercing, a designation that would make it illegal for civilians under the guise of officer safety. They say it's not sporting, not necessary for home defense, and therefore shouldn't be legal in the hands of the public. The backlash was massive. Gun owners everywhere pushed back. Public comments flooded in. For a while, the ATF retreated, but the intent never really disappeared. What they didn't tell us was that while they were trying to keep it out of our hands, they were quietly keeping it in theirs. I came across multiple references in audit reports, especially one from 2018 by the Office of the Inspector General, that noted the ATF was holding on to seized ammunition, including rounds no longer available for legal civilian use. They described these stockpiles as being retained for administrative review, technical classification, or pending destruction. But strangely, the destruction never seems to happen. Instead, these rounds just stay. Stored, locked up, monitored. There were even indications that some of this so-called retained ammunition is being used for what they call technical benchmarking. That sounds like harmless bureaucratic lingo. But let's be honest, when they use this ammo in test scenarios, firing ranges, or analysis labs, it's not being destroyed, it's being used. And if they believe it's too dangerous for us, then why are they using it so freely themselves? To put it plainly, they don't destroy this ammo because they don't want to destroy it. They want it available, just not for you or me. They're not holding on to 5 or 10 boxes for testing. They're holding on to full crates, full pallets. There are facilities where entire storage rooms are dedicated to these banned or disputed rounds. If I had that much ammunition in my garage, especially after a ban, I'd be arrested, or, at the very least, have my home raided and everything confiscated. But when it's the government, they slap a label on the crate and call it evidence. They make up a new acronym. They hide it behind policy. And we're expected to trust that it's all for our safety. You know what really gets me? The sheer hypocrisy. The ATF has spent years trying to classify certain rounds, like the M855 green tip, as armor-piercing. They've argued these rounds pose a direct threat to law enforcement, that they can punch through soft body armor, and therefore, civilians shouldn't have them. They paint these rounds as a public menace, a liability, something no reasonable person would need for sporting or self-defense. But behind closed doors, guess what they're doing? They're keeping them, quietly, steadily, in large quantities. You don't have to be a genius to see the contradiction here. If something is too dangerous for public use, why is it okay for the government to hold on to it? Are we expected to believe they're simply sitting on stacks of so-called illegal ammo for science projects or courtroom displays? Or is there something else going on? And that's where the narrative starts to crack. If you or I had a warehouse full of restricted ammunition, especially if we didn't report it properly, we'd be charged, maybe even made an example of. But when the ATF does it, it's evidence retention or technical analysis. They always have a label, always have an excuse, but it's never transparent. Now, I'm not naive. I know the government retains certain materials for law enforcement purposes, but this goes beyond basic protocol. This looks like strategic hoarding, like they're building a buffer for themselves, maybe in case of future restrictions, maybe for training, maybe for something else entirely. And let's not ignore the chilling message this sends. We trust ourselves with this ammo, but not you. That's not public safety. That's control. It's the same double standard we've seen over and over again, rules for them and restrictions for the rest of us. We're told to give up certain calibers, avoid specific bullet types, all while the very agency enforcing those rules is sitting on stockpiles of that exact same ammunition. Let me put it this way. If you see a lifeguard pulling people out of the pool while quietly putting on scuba gear, you'd start asking questions. Well, I'm asking. And you should be too. Because when the enforcer becomes the hoarder, we've crossed the line from law to leverage. And in a nation built on checks and balances, that's not just suspicious, it's dangerous. I know what some people are thinking. I can hear the skeptics already. Calm down. This is standard law enforcement stuff. Of course, the ATF keeps some ammo for testing. It's not that deep, and that's the polished version of the official line. The ATF and its defenders will tell you that the agency needs to retain certain types of ammunition for ballistic comparison, forensic science, courtroom evidence, and training. They say it's routine, administrative, harmless, but here's where the whole thing falls apart for me. First off, the scale makes no sense. You don't need thousands of rounds to test one bullet's penetration. You don't need warehouse-sized inventories to present an exhibit in court. You don't need to retain banned ammunition indefinitely unless there's something else going on, something they're not saying out loud. I've read through FOIA reports, ones released thanks to legal pressure by watchdog groups like Gun Owners of America. What I saw was beyond frustrating. Entire sections were blacked out, entire paragraphs redacted. These aren't documents about covert international threats. These are inventory logs, domestic stockpile records. If this is all above board, Why are they hiding so much? One line in particular stuck with me. It referred to long-term retention of restricted ammunition for agency evaluation. Long-term? Evaluation of what? The metallurgy? The packaging? Or maybe something a bit more real, like field testing, tactical use, or readiness training. I'm not speculating recklessly here. I'm connecting dots. Dots they've laid out in plain sight, if you're paying attention. And here's the worst part. They're watching you more than they're watching themselves. According to internal memos, the ATF and FBI have been tracking suspicious purchases of ammunition, particularly any civilian buying over 1,000 rounds in a short time. You and I both know that's a regular weekend for sport shooters, ranchers, or anyone who wants to be prepared. But to the government, it raises a flag. Let's think about that for a second. You buy in bulk to save money or stock up for training, and suddenly your name ends up on a list. Meanwhile, the agency tracking you is sitting on a hidden cache of the exact same ammunition, ammo they claim is too dangerous for you to own. You tell me, how is that not a double standard? But it doesn't end there. We're not just talking about policy hypocrisy. We're talking about the erosion of trust between a government and its people. Because when you ask about this ammo, when you file a FOIA request, when you demand transparency, you don't get straight answers. You get brush-offs, bureaucratic delays, entire files blacked out. If they've got nothing to hide, why treat simple inventory data like a national security threat? Even members of Congress have taken notice. Senator Rand Paul has repeatedly called out the ATF and DOJ for their lack of transparency and overreach. In 2022, Senator Mike Rounds introduced legislation to limit the ATF's ability to redefine ammunition classifications without congressional approval. Why? Because the agency keeps shifting the goalposts behind closed doors, labeling common civilian rounds as armor-piercing, while quietly keeping them in federal stockpiles. And yet, whenever you speak up, you're labeled as paranoid, as if it's irrational to question why the government is hoarding what it tells you to surrender. This is the two-faced game they play. They say, for public safety, while exempting themselves from their own restrictions, they create regulations that bind you while building flexibility into their own operations. It's not about balance, it's about control. When federal agencies operate without meaningful oversight, when they accumulate tools of force while treating citizens with suspicion, that's not public service. That's authoritarian drift. And we've seen where that road leads, time and time again, throughout history. Now, some people might still argue, what's the big deal? It's just ammo. The ATF isn't kicking down your door. Okay, maybe not today. But here's the thing. Erosion doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, in the dark, behind policy memos and redacted files. They're already watching your buying patterns. They're already deciding what rounds you can own. They're already building their own private reserves. And here's what that tells me. They're preparing for something they think might come. The question is, what are you preparing for? I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not saying the sky is falling. But I am saying this. When one side holds all the bullets and makes all the rules, it stops being about safety. It starts being about power. If you've watched this far, you probably already feel that something isn't right. And you're not wrong. This isn't just about what the ATF is stockpiling. It's about who gets to control what and who doesn't. It's about the fact that while you have to think twice before buying a case of ammo online, they can store it by the pallet with no explanation. You think that doesn't affect you? Think again. Because this isn't some far-off legal drama happening in Washington. This is about the slow erosion of rights. Your rights. This is about a government agency saying, we know better than you do. We'll keep the dangerous stuff, and you'll learn to live without it. And the scariest part? Most people won't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Every time you go to the store and see prices sky high or shelves empty, ask yourself, who's controlling the flow? Who's deciding what you can and can't have? If the ATF really is holding on to ammo they say you shouldn't possess, then that's not just hypocrisy. That's selective privilege. That's a power imbalance. That's one rule for them, another for us. And if we don't ask questions, if we don't push back, they'll keep pushing forward. This matters to you, because freedom doesn't vanish overnight. It disappears one restriction, one regulation, one excuse at a time. And if you think they'll stop with just ammo, you haven't been paying attention. The ATF is stockpiling ammo they want to ban. That's not a theory. It's documented, stored, and hidden behind bureaucratic walls. And they're hoping you don't notice, or if you do, that you'll stay quiet. But silence is compliance. We're not just talking about ammo anymore. We're talking about accountability, about drawing a line between enforcement and overreach, between public service and private stockpiling. So here's what you do. Don't just watch this video. Share it. Talk about it. Ask your representatives why a federal agency can hold what they won't let you buy. And most importantly, stay loud. When the ATF opens public comment on any new rule, don't ignore it. Let's show up, speak up, fight back. Because if we let them control what we can own, while they hoard what we can't, then we've already lost more than ammo. We've lost the freedom to defend ourselves.